Good afternoon. This is Henry Keane and our usual daily wrap-up on UATV, breaking hard things into easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. We, the news telethon FreeDom channel that is most closely related to UATV, turns 1 year old today. 365 days of war. We are here for you, telling you the truth about this war from the eye of the storm. We are starting today with accepting our first anniversary congratulations and some summary from my colleagues.
Год действительно был непростой.
This year was not easy. I was pleased to work in such a strong team, really a team, because it was not easy to work in Donbass all this year, despite the fact that we were moving towards victory. However, in a team with our editors and with our leadership, it has always been with great support. What do I remember about this year? A lot of difficult, very complex stories of people. It is not easy to see people in unusual life circumstances for them, to see those cities where you came and filmed how they grew up, developed. Those cities that have been on the front line since 2014, such as Avdiivka. It is difficult to see the cities that you saw, what was being built, what was reviving, appeared, and then to see the very difficult destruction, the difficult stories of people that they told. For me, at first, especially for children and the elderly, it was not easy, it was hard. And you understand that it was needed to make materials, that needed to be shown. And inside you, everything just turned upside down.
Конечно, было страшно, потому что
I spent 8 years in our place in Severodonetsk, where I moved from the occupied Luhansk. The city became my hometown, and then the Russian military came again to take away my second hometown. It was very scary at that time because they bombed the city. There were explosions in different parts of the city. They came to my house. They threatened me to stop my journalistic activities. And they smashed my house as a result. My apartment was burned down. It was very scary, nothing was clear, and I stayed in my hometown until the very end. And only 2 days before the occupation, when the apartment had already burned down and I understood that street fighting was going on, I left.
I want to thank these brave colleagues who tell us about the real situation in the shelled cities. But getting back to wrapping up things for you today, losing on a battlefield cripples Putin's image, as if an image of a murderer and a thug could be crippled anymore. Speaking to the Senate Intelligence Committee on Wednesday, Director of United States National Intelligence, Avril Haines, said that Russia probably does not seek direct conflict with the US and NATO, but that a war against Ukraine carries a great risk that could happen. There is a real possibility that Russia's military setbacks in Ukraine will damage Russian President Vladimir Putin's credibility at home, Haines said, making escalation more likely. Put in simple terms, it tells you, dear world, a lot about the credibility scale that Russian nation chooses. Unjust criminal war? Okay. Hundreds of thousands of dead? All right. Whatever, we're just going to have more sex, right? Trillions spent not on medicine, science, space, economy, social sphere, sports, etc., but on manifestation of an outdated Soviet greatness. And the pathetic paradox is that Vladimir Putin would love to be another Stalin, but he just can't. Although we are not going to make a mistake of belittling Putin's Russia abilities, it is a big and dangerous enemy. However, it is not the size that makes a country great. I will be oversimplifying things now, of course, but America is great because the number of Nobel Prize winners is greatest in the whole world. The Germany is great because they have the greatest engineers and machinery in the world. France is great because its never-ending quest for freedom and that rebellious spirit and those baguettes, of course. Italy is great because of the finest essence of style and beauty, taken to a level where gods kneel to a man who was able to create anything like that, and it makes deities doubt who created who. Now that is greatness. Quality, not quantity. Not a barbaric horde that has invaded Ukraine to kill and to die for its outdated, elderly Soviet Tsar.
Putin is probably well aware of the limits of what his military can achieve and seems to be focused on more modest military goals for now. If Russia doesn't mobilize and secure significant supply of ammunition, then it will become increasingly difficult for it to maintain even the current level of offensive operations. Avril Haines, Director of U.S. National Intelligence.
United States intelligence estimates that Russia will not be able to rebuild its military strength enough this year to make major territorial gains. Russia is suffering heavy losses on the battlefield, and you can see it on your screen. Worth mentioning also what Haines said about China.
Perhaps it is needless to say that China, which increasingly challenges the United States, all economically, technologically, politically and militarily around the world, remains our unprecedented security priority. Avril Haines, Director of U.S. National Intelligence.
At a time when the Intelligence Committee held its annual U.S. National Security Threat hearing, the intelligence services released a report saying that China will continue to cooperate with Russia on the U.S. challenge despite expected international concern on the invasion of Ukraine. Jesus, Joseph, Mary and the wee donkey. Well, of course, China will continue its course. You want to know why, put in simple terms? Because it can. Why should it stop while all the international community really does, if compared to what it really could do, is expressing concern? Fuck international concerns expression thinks China and sells drones to Russia. Fuck whatever the international community says, because it does nothing anyway. They don't offer us anything better, and their world definitely has a lot to offer to China to make its communist heart change. No global concern expression or allusions on threatening China. It's ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. We as a collective West can't do anything even with that outdated Russian horde, let alone the modern Chinese army. Why not offer China, say, Russian Siberia after Ukraine wins? Oh, right, Russian Siberia is already Chinese. Okay, then maybe let's give them Hungary. Yeah, let's give them Hungary. I mean, Hungary and both of its Orbans are anyway doing their best to do the worst, to help Russia and to oppose Ukraine anywhere and anyhow possible. So let's promise Hungary to China as a parking lot for Xi Jinping's motorcade. But seriously, going back to our muttons, yes, Putin grows weaker and does all he can to protract the war, so to accumulate the resources, to buy them from China, Hungary or other pro-Soviet regimes. So how many super intelligent intelligence services do we really need to understand what should we do with it? Maybe to make Ukraine stronger? Maybe it is time for you, dear world, to finally understand that we, the Ukraine, are your weapon against dictatorship. Maybe the time is now, when we suffer 81 fucking cruise missiles a day, while you guys in your high chairs are expressing global concerns. It is crucial not to survive these days, but to win. Because surviving is easy and means only one thing: existence in slavery, in protectorate, in a reservation, in humility. Existence, not life, because there is no life in slavery. And I'm absolutely sure that when Ukraine will win, China will simply nod and will be completely okay with it. 10th package of sanctions. What are these? In easy terms. Well, as easy as it gets, sorry. First, the new measures prohibit Russian nationals and entities from booking gas storage capacity in the Union. A transitional period until March 27 this year is envisaged as sufficient to execute the operations necessary to termination of the existing contract. Second, the 10th package has expanded the list of goods and technology that may not be exported or provided to Russian persons or for use in Russia. This applies in particular to the lists of products and technology which contribute to Russia's military and technological enhancement. Third, the 10th package extends existing restrictions on imports of goods that generate significant revenues for Russia. The new import ban covers goods such as asphalt, petroleum coke, and petroleum jelly. Fourth, by way of the new measures, the 10th package bans Russian nationals or other natural persons residing in Russia from holding posts in the governing bodies of European critical infrastructures and critical entities. By the way, this prohibition for some reason does not apply to EU, EEA or Swiss nationals. I mean, this one is hilarious. Put this hard thing in simple terms, it means that Russian oligarchs with Swiss passports can just go and elect themselves in EU governing bodies. Lovely. Fifth, the new measures introduce a requirement for EU individuals and legal entities to report information on the assets and reserves of the Central Bank of Russia and the Russian National Wealth Fund. Sixth, concerning the existing prohibitions on providing technical assistance under regulation, the new measures introduce an exception for the provision of maritime pilot services that are strictly necessary to ensure maritime safety. And finally, as part of the 10th package, the EU has designated an additional 87 individuals and 34 entities to the sanctioned lists. The new listing includes, among others, Alfa Bank, Rosbank, Tinkoff Bank, the National Wealth Fund of the Russian Federation and the Russian National Reinsurance Company. A significant number of designations covers the Russian military and defense sectors, including companies manufacturing missiles, drone aircrafts, military vehicles, warships or control systems, and those companies supplying the Russian armed forces. At the same time, the 10th sanctions package did not include a number of elements that Ukraine insisted on, including restrictions on the activities of the Rosatom Corporation involved in the occupation of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the IT sector, the sale of diamonds and maritime logistics. Since Russia's aggression against Ukraine continues, as you have probably noticed by yesterday's 81 missile launched at Ukraine, we are convinced that the EU should prepare for the adoption of the next 11th package of sanctions as soon as possible.
Today, I spoke with President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, in particular about energy support for Ukraine. I informed her about the consequences of the attack by the terrorist state. I am grateful to the Mrs. Ursula for the relevant assistance provided. Of course, we also discussed the issue of Putin pressure on Russia for terror, sanctions pressure, ways to expand sanctions. By the way, as a result of this strike, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was disconnected from the power grid again. This is a critical situation, and Russia is deliberately creating such critical situation at our nuclear facilities. This simply means by definition that Russia cannot be a bona fide participant in any relation in the nuclear sphere. This means that the sooner the Russian nuclear industry is subjected to sanctions, the safer the world will be. A terrorist state cannot be allowed to use any nuclear facilities anywhere in the world for terror.
This is why increasing sanctions pressure from one side and ensuring compliance with existing restrictions, including the closure of loopholes and current legislation, should complement each other. Ukraine supports the expansion of the sanctions coalition, particularly by including Asian and Latin American countries. Strengthening sanctions is not a choice, but a necessity, you see. Ukraine and the international community must send a clear message to all potential aggressors. Any predatory war will result in maximum damage to the aggressor. Ukraine calls for the protection and return of Ukrainian children unlawfully deported to Russia. I could have asked myself now if there is any lawful deportation of children exists as a legal term, but I'm out of my usual sarcasm here. Russia's actions in Ukraine against Ukrainian children can be described as the world's largest child kidnapping and human abduction operation in modern history. It is not just inhumane and barbaric, it's worse, it's Russian.
According to the latest verified data of the Commissioner for Human Rights of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Dmytro Lubinets, Russia kidnapped and took away 16,226 Ukrainian children, which is a direct sign of genocide. They are forcibly adopted, forced to renounce their Ukrainian identity. Olena Kondratyuk, Deputy Chair of the Verkhovna Rada.
Thousands of children from Ukraine's temporarily occupied territories were forcibly transferred to Russia and handed over to Russian families for adoption. Many of these children ended up in the most remote areas of Russia. More than 16,000 Ukrainian children have been already deported by Russian invading forces, including under the false guise of psychiatric and medical rehabilitation. You only listen to this: to invade someone's home, to kill the parents, to take the kids with you because they need to be cured of the post-traumatic stress they experienced. Isn't that the last possible bottom line of morbid Russian bloodthirsty hypocrisy crossed? What is the fate of these children? How many of them became victims of child trafficking and sexual violence, probably? These children require immediate protection and must return home to their parents and loved ones. Forced deportation of children falls under the definition of genocide as stated in the Genocide Convention. The Russian government is currently involved in this crime at all levels. This is the bare fact. Ukraine calls on the international community to demand that Russia stop abducting Ukrainian children and return them to Ukraine immediately. We also make sure that all Russian criminals involved in the genocide of Ukrainian children will be held accountable. Put in simple terms, it reads as, those who steal our kids, we will find you, and you will get what you deserve. Promised to you by us, the Ukrainian nation, me, Henry Keane, and UATV channel, explaining hard things in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Stay safe and tuned for more.